What more could a man dream of? If only I were 10 years younger. It's no good teasing an old man. We both laughed lightly at the situation. Come on, Mr. Simmons, let's go get some fresh lobsters for dinner. We finished our long necks and headed out the door. The restaurant and food were great. I didn't really like the wine the hostess chose, but I tried to be gracious. It didn't work. What's wrong with the wine, Mr. Simmons? Was I that obvious? I'm sorry, it was unintentional, a kind of reflex action. When I was 18, I got drunk on cheap white wine like a dog. I've never been so miserable before or since. Every time I smell or taste white wine, I vomit. I can't explain it. It's good wine, but don't worry about it. 5 minutes later, we had two cold long necks. Oddly enough, there was little conversation during the meal. At the end, we each had a fruit sorbet and drank coffee. Tell me about yourself. Are you married? Do you have children? What do you do for a living? We have all night, and I'm dying to know what brought us together. It's a lot of questions. I have two daughters. Both of them are at Columbia University studying international banking or something like that. I don't really know. I just pay the tuition. It's interesting. I have a master's degree from Columbia University, and I'm one of their guest lecturers. I got to meet both of them. Have you seen them this morning? We had lunch together. They hate it when I make them skip class. You must have gotten married early since you have two girls in college. That sounds like a phrase a guy could use. I felt comfortable with this Mediterranean beauty. I could have talked to her all night. I am currently estranged from my wife. That's a strange word. I never thought I could use it. She left me for a rich wheeler dealer. I think he builds shopping malls or business complexes. Anyway, he's got a fancy car and a big apartment. She told me she's decided to switch. The divorce will be final in about 4 weeks. That's a stupid reason to leave a good marriage. I guess everything was fine until she met this guy. I guess she was never happy with my choice of work. I had several opportunities to advance my career, but she refused to move forward. I wasn't thrilled about it, but decided it was necessary to save the marriage. Now I feel like nothing. And what do you do? There was an awkward pause. How do you tell a beautiful, rich, successful woman that you work as a grocery manager at a supermarket? She noticed my discomfort and reacted accordingly. It's not important. We can talk about it later. No, it's okay, I'm not ashamed of what I do. It's just that being a supermarket grocery manager isn't the kind of job that impresses the ladies. It doesn't bother my daughters, but my wife often purposely forgot to mention it in conversation. I could tell it was bothering her. Do you like what you do? Yes, and I'm good at it. The server brought more coffee and cleared the table. Mr. Simmons, I realize you've only known me for a short time, but I believe that first impressions are very important. Very briefly, what is your first impression of me? The question put me in an awkward position. If I answered honestly, I might push her away. And if I tried to butter her up, I was sure she would see right through it and think I was a liar. What to do? What do I do? In short, I see you as beautiful, intelligent, educated, and confident. Her head was tilted down slightly and her eyes were looking up at me. I noticed a small smirk. I was hoping for candor. I'm sorry, but we were having such a pleasant evening, I didn't want to spoil it. Do you really have such a bad opinion of me? I don't want you to resent me. Maybe that's why your wife left you for another man. If you hadn't always tried to please her, your marriage would have been stronger. It was harsh, but I have to admit there was some truth to it, Miss Rothberg. I believe you are cunning and manipulative. You use your beauty and charm to get what you want. You are used to getting your way, and I feel you are a bit of a spoiled brat. You play with men but are afraid of commitment. From the looks of it, you know how to make money and spend and invest it wisely. If you weren't so obsessed with wanting to prove that you are as good as any man, you'd probably make a good mother. I felt uncomfortable after saying that, but she made me angry with her comment about my marriage. For a few moments we just sat there staring at each other. Do you really think I'd be a good mother? The mood suddenly improved dramatically during the short drive back to the condo. Things were pleasant again. I knew she had heard everything I said, but seemed to accept it without argument. She wanted the truth and I gave it to her. The fact that she wasn't upset made me feel better about being honest with her. My night as Letitia Rothberg's sex slave turned out to be a little boring. It's hard to have sex in separate bedrooms. That's okay because I wasn't expecting anything anyway. The next morning I got up first and found a breakfast of fruit danishes and hot coffee waiting for me, along with a copy of the Wall Street Journal. The wind had died down and I enjoyed relaxing on the balcony overlooking the Caribbean. I could get used to this. Letitia joined me about 20 minutes later and jokingly snatched up part of the paper. We sat in silence, reading and sipping coffee as if we'd been doing it for years. I had known this woman for less than 24 hours, but everything about her was natural and comfortable. I'm afraid my phone doesn't work here, and I really want to call my daughters. Letitia held out her cell phone to me. Be my guest. Cindy, it's Daddy. Where are you? Is everything okay? Cell phone says London. I'm in the Caymans and everything is fine. I just thought I should let you know, since I didn't go straight home, that I'm staying with a friend. I had to use her phone. They showed a picture of you on TV last night. They showed you getting on an airplane with Letitia Rothberg. What the hell are you doing with Letitia Rothberg? It's the friend I'm staying with. What's the big deal? Why are you with her? Everything's fine, nothing insidious is going on. I don't understand your concern, Dad. That woman is a barracuda. She eats men for breakfast. Letitia was bringing a tray of breakfast from the balcony as she walked by. I couldn't resist. This is my daughter Cindy, she's in New York. She told me to be careful because you're a barracuda. Sure enough, Cindy heard me say this to Letitia and let out a loud groan. Over the phone, I could make out Cindy and Sandy discussing something quickly on the other end. Why are you there? How do you know her? When are you coming home? Before I could answer any of her questions, Letitia was already standing with her hand outstretched, waiting for me to hand her the phone. Hi Cindy. It's Letitia. Your father told me about you and your sister. I'll be in New York tomorrow and would like to have lunch with you too. Where can I pick you up? Of course. There was no way I could have known the other side of this conversation. Who is this professor? Pause. No problem. I'll pick you up from the classroom at 11. I'll tell you goodbye. Bye. Letitia gave me back my cell phone. Your daughter said goodbye. I'll have lunch with them tomorrow. I promise to be nice, even though they think I'm a fish. She giggled lightly and wiggled her and went to her room. An hour later we were at the Federal Reserve Bank of the Cayman Islands. Under the experienced guidance of my hostess, I set up my first offshore bank account, and 20 minutes later, I saw that my new account had been credited with $4 million from Towers and Burns. I figured that was a fair price for 215 pennies. After dinner, she asked a friend to take us to feed manta rays. At dinner, I asked her why she worked for a firm like Towers and Burns and learned that she owned 60% of the company. What else can you tell me about yourself? Apparently you are a major player on the global financial scene, and I'm embarrassed to say that I don't know anything about you. I was born and raised in London. My father is Israeli and my mother is Turkish. I have an MBA from Columbia University. I am not married, but I have been engaged twice. I haven't had a serious relationship in over 3 years. I've learned not to trust men who show interest in me. I guess you could say I'm cynical, but I feel like most of them want something from me but have nothing to offer in return. That's unfortunate. I was hoping to get a ride back to the condo. Does that mean you don't trust me? You need to take this seriously, you big jerk. I'm sorry if I came across as insensitive. I didn't mean to be. I guess it's hard for me to relate to your problem. I'll try to be better. Okay, let's relax. We have a party to go to. We ended the evening at a cocktail party at a major hotel. Everyone knew her and treated her like a celebrity. I spent the evening trying to remain even more inconspicuous than I was. I was still wearing the street clothes I had worn in New York. I had not supposed that I was to travel to the tropics. At first Letitia seemed obliged to accompany me, but I persuaded her to enjoy herself and let me blend in with the tree where I felt comfortable. She did her best, but for most of the night she constantly checked on me. Anyway, I found myself chatting with a couple of Hispanic gentlemen, cattle ranchers from Argentina. The conversation started with soccer and then moved on to fishing. At least the conversation was in English, I suppose for my benefit. One of them remarked how attractive Letitia looked. Not knowing that I was her chaperone for the evening, I felt a little flattered. My contribution to the chatter consisted mostly of smiles and nods. I wasn't knowledgeable enough about any of the topics to add anything of substance until Ramon Duarte brought up the topic of investments. He was interested in winter wheat. I listened as he explained in detail why he was going to invest a lot of his money in something he obviously knew nothing about. I got the impression that he was pretty rich and I was a little confused as to how he did it. I usually pride myself on having a poker face. But I guess I failed at it this time, Mr. Simmons. I can see by the look on your face that you disagree with me about investing in winter wheat. I was caught. I was supposed to remain invisible and inaudible. My invisibility cloak failed me. I'm sorry, Ramon. I'm afraid I'm not an investor, and I don't understand the complexity of this case. I called him by his first name because I was uncomfortable addressing him formally. Maybe so, but I have a feeling you have an opinion on the matter. I'm going to pester you until you share it with us. I was trapped. I tried to feign a small smile. I need a fresh drink. For the next hour, the two gentlemen listened intently as an Alabama greengrocer explained that the excellent winter wheat crop in Alberta and Saskatchewan would more than compensate for the poor harvest in the States. The Canadian Grain Board has leased all available in North and South Dakota to store the surplus, and has even reserved rail cars of grain for short-term storage. Within a week, winter wheat futures will begin to fall, and will continue to fall until the market stabilizes. Both Canada and the States will be forced to unload wheat overseas. I was running out of clever words when Letitia came up. Raman and his friend were flattered that she joined our little group, and were genuinely surprised when she grabbed my hand and led me away. What the hell was that, Gary? We were just talking about food, about groceries. She smiled slightly at me as we left to head back to the condo. The next morning we flew back to New York where a group of photographers were eager to capture her arrival. A courier from Towers and Burns handed me a small package containing the coins I had left behind. Letitia and I said our goodbyes and I headed to the commuter train terminal to fly back to Huntsville. The divorce and the sale of the house went according to plan. Phil Williams from the main office left me several messages asking me to call him. They again asked me to consider moving to the company's headquarters in New York. This time I agreed. John Smurd also left a message he wanted to meet for lunch. I took myself away in my locker at work and wished my shifters good luck. There was a picture in the paper of Clayton and Marcy at a barbecue. For a local politician, they looked like the perfect couple. It took me a full day to scan and identify all the coins in the bag from New York. With 3 weeks to go, I decided to put them on eBay as soon as possible. Everything should be fine, just as long as they didn't get caught by any scumbags. It took a full day to post the coin ads and prepare all the envelopes and blank stickers for shipping. All the money went into my PayPal account and from there to my new offshore bank. Now I had the weekend to relax. My Friday lunch with John Smurd was interesting. John was extremely pleased that I had gotten Clayton involved, but was unhappy that I'd gotten nothing out of the deal, explaining that to him would have been too difficult. Lunch went fine, and before he left he gave me the deeds to 5 acres of land on the outskirts of town. He and his wife were leaving for Florida, and he wanted to get the house in order before he left. No good deed goes unrewarded. Shortly after John and I parted ways, my cell phone rang. Cindy and Sandy were arriving in Nashville in 2 hours. I had plenty of time to pick them up. Airfare to Nashville was half the price of airfare to Huntsville, and the girls were on a budget. I had no trouble getting there and picking them up. Cindy couldn't wait to talk about lettuce. The lecture hall was hosting an advanced corporate finance course for over 300 students. In the middle of the lecture, the professor stopped to introduce Letitia to the students. She just appeared as if she owned the place. She spoke to the class for about 10 minutes, and then announced that she needed 2 students for lunch at the Westin Hotel. We couldn't believe it when she called our names. So you liked her? She's amazing, Dad. How the hell did you manage to meet her? Well, she said she was looking for a sex slave and I was her first choice. Sandy tapped me on the shoulder. This isn't funny. Be serious. Okay. What did you talk about at lunch? She asked about our classes and schoolwork. Sandy chuckled lightly. She had a lot of questions about you. In fact, Cindy and I agree that she was interested in more than just friendship. I'm 10 years older than her and a couple of dollars poorer. I'm sorry, girls, but she's totally out of my league, Daddy. She can have any man she wants. Why? You think about it and give us a clue. From our point of view, you're perfect. But Letitia Rothberg doesn't know you like we do. Apparently your mother didn't know me either. Everything went quiet for a few minutes. My remark about the mother sounded like a punch. It was not my intention to turn my daughters against their mother, and I regretted saying what I did. I'm sorry, girls, that didn't sound right. Your mother is a wonderful woman, and I have no right to say that. Don't worry about it, Dad. We understand more than you think. All was quiet for a few miles, and then just as we crossed the Alabama state line, Sandy's cell phone buzzed. Hello. Pause. We arrived about an hour ago. Everything's fine. Pause. You're kidding. Pause. That sounds great. I'll tell him. Thanks for the call. Bye. In the rearview mirror, I noticed Sandy giving Cindy the thumbs up sign. What was that? Sandy leaned over the front seat of the car. Guess what, Daddy? Letitia is coming to Huntsville Tuesday morning. She said you have to pay her for the night and that she expects breakfast in bed. I was flattered to hear the news, but I felt pressured by Letitia and now my daughters. It all sounded wonderful and I hoped I was up to the task and not just this one. The weekend with the girls went great. They spent Saturday afternoon with their mom, but didn't get to meet Clayton. I asked them not to mention lettuce. We sorted out all the things they wanted to leave at the house. By the time they left, we had it all sorted out. I made an upfront payment to store the stuff until they finished school. As we drove back to Nashville, they made me promise to try to be companionable with Letitia. When I asked them what they meant, Cindy said just don't make her mad. That was simple enough. They were excited about my move to town. I still didn't understand what Letitia needed from an old man who didn't even own an Armani suit. When I got home, it was time to relax with a beer in the Sunday paper. There were no pictures of Marcy and Clayton this week, but there was a short story about Keystone Development having trouble financing a local project. Winter wheat futures had fallen in value for a record time. This was interesting. I called Terry Davis and asked him to come over. It wasn't lunch, but I figured we could talk over a couple beers. Clayton Manning had a mixed past, to say the least. For the past few years he'd been either broke or in great wealth. He'd spent a lot of time moving to get ahead of creditors and friends who lent him money. His new project began to fail. The people and investors who supported him were disappearing. I don't remember beer ever tasting so good. Monday morning turned out better than one might have expected. The coins I put up for auction sold much better than I expected. Cookson estimated the value of the coins at about $300,000. It didn't look like they would go that high, but they may well have gone over $200,000. In a little over 2 weeks, I will be a free man. 3 months ago, this would have seemed like a disaster, but today I was looking forward to it. The people who bought the house had negotiated the financing and were ready to close the deal. I thought it was funny that Marcy felt so comfortable with Clayton that she didn't need any of our joint possessions. I wondered if she realized how slippery her future was. At 3 o'clock I had a meeting with the people who bought the house. A check for $200,000 went immediately into my offshore account. They had no objection to me staying in the house for another week. Suited both of us. The next morning I received a phone call before I had even had my coffee. An unknown person officially notified me that Miss Rothberg would be arriving at 10:45 a.m. on Delta Flight 724. I arrived 30 minutes early. Yes, I was a little worried. Anyway, several paparazzi had gotten wind of her arrival and were waiting outside the terminal. I tried my best to be inconspicuous. I parked my car in the short-term parking lot because I wasn't expecting so much attention. Instead of waiting for me to pick her up, she chose to walk with me behind the car. Of course, the photographers remembered my license plate number, and the cat jumped out of the bag. I'm not used to such a fuss, but Letitia didn't seem the least bit embarrassed by it. She apologized to me for it on the way home. I couldn't help but remember that as she was getting off the airplane, I wanted to kiss her. Stupid old man. I was embarrassed by the sparseness of the house. Over the past few months I had gotten rid of everything I could. The only things left were the necessities that the new owner had agreed to take responsibility for after I left. My guests seemed amused by my attempts to apologize. There was nothing in the house to eat, so we made a quick stop at the local Taco Bell. Her choice. I promised her Dreamland ribs for dinner. It was nice to be around a woman with a healthy appetite. Letitia, I'm glad you're here, but I don't understand why I assumed you'd be back to business. This is business, silly. I understand you're moving to New York next week. You need a place to stay and I have a spare bedroom. I'm here to help you pack a truck. We'll be here tomorrow morning to move anything you can't fit in the car. Just no furniture, please. How did you know I was moving? That's what I do. If I keep my eye on the little things, the big things come by themselves. It's a load of crap, but that's what I've always wanted to say. Are you conspiring with my daughters? I tried to grin innocently at that, but it was hard for an old man to appear sly. Her offer was unexpected, but I couldn't think of a single reason to refuse it. Sure, now let's get some boxes so we can pack. I thought she would have been more comfortable sitting in a boardroom or a bank somewhere, but she seemed to enjoy just talking to me, but I still felt a little awkward about the age difference. We ended up throwing out more stuff than we had packed. She had an opinion about my closet, and she refused to listen to my pleas for mercy. Once I was settled in New York, she promised to take me to the store to get some appropriate clothes. When we were done, there were more boxes than could fit in my car, but not enough for a moving van. I hoped she'd ordered a small truck. I set aside my laptop and small inkjet printer to attend to an eBay auction. We were just getting ready for dinner when a new surprise awaited us. A delivery van was parked in front of the house. Letitia and I watched the driver in a smart uniform get down from the cab with the clipboard. Are you Gary Simmons? Yes, I have a delivery for you. Where do you want it? What the hell is this? The car? It's from Mr. Ramon Duarte. Is there room in the garage? The spot in the garage where Marcy's Volvo used to be was empty. I pointed in that direction and nodded. I noticed Letitia put her hand to her mouth and giggled. I don't know for sure, but I think she was amused by my bewilderment. 5 minutes later, I was looking at a shiny orange sports car standing next to my outdated Volvo. What the hell is this? With great pride, the courier said this is a 2008 Lamborghini Gallardo Spider Superleggera model. Isn't it the most beautiful thing you've ever seen? Letitia could barely contain her laughter. She wasn't loud or anything, but she was definitely enjoying herself. I signed the shipping form for the fancy uniform to go home. I had no idea what I was going to do with my gift, but I knew I wasn't going to take it with me to New York. Get in the Volvo, Little Miss Funny Pants. My guest was still smiling as we pulled away from the driveway. I ordered a full rack of ribs and 2 Fosters. Could you explain what's going on with the car? Ramon stocked up on winter wheat. Everyone thought he was crazy. When the price started to drop, he started doubling contracts. In less than a week, he made over $40 million. He was happy with the money, but he was thrilled with the comments he received about his smart move. Well, good for Ramon. I hope he didn't mention my name. He wanted to pay his respects to you, but not without your consent. He thanked me for bringing you to the party and asked for your address. However, I didn't know he was going to do that. The ribs arrived and I watched, mesmerized, as Letitia dipped a few of them into Tabasco and then got down to business. God, I love that girl. You know I'm going to send it back in the morning, don't you? That's what I thought. Don't worry about it, Ramon won't take offense. He would have gladly offered you the money, but he probably figured you'd refuse. That way you'll feel more obligated to keep the money. We had to order a few more beers because of the Tabasco. I felt good and I didn't want to go home. That moment, I would have given anything to spend the night in bed with this beautiful young vixen. I envied the suave, debonair, lovable guys who could get any girl in the world into bed in 5 minutes. The best I could hope for was a good-night kiss. We couldn't talk all night, so eventually I was forced to go home. The next morning was wonderful. All my worries were in vain. As soon as we entered the house, Letitia took me by the hand and led me to the bedroom. Since I was a true gentleman, I did my best to make sure her needs were met first. As a reward, I was rewarded with the best night of sex of my secluded life. Breakfast in bed consisted of juice, coffee and Danish. I'm sorry, but under the circumstances, it's the best I can do. He's as good as I could have hoped for. Trying to eat off a tray in bed is very uncomfortable. After a few giggles and rearrangements, we retreated to the kitchen. Breakfast in bed. Sounds neater than it is, Letitia. I don't want to spoil the mood, but I'm really curious as to why you chose me. I don't have much to offer and you deserve so much. I've been burned many times by slick debonair boy lovers. I won't fall into that trap again. I see I'm attracted to you because I'm not a trickster or a debauchee. My guest found this amusing and laughed a little. Gary, I was impressed with the deal you made with James in New York. I just sold some coins. Not that it's silly. I found your proposed agreement to purchase trust land intriguing. Do you consider me a philanthropist? Oh, not at all. I see you as a cunning who took advantage of a unique situation to mess with his wife's lover. Of course. This brought a smile to my face. I was amazed at how smart she was and how well she hit it. Was that wrong? No, Gary, that was brilliant. I was impressed and wanted to know more about you. You couldn't possibly know what I was doing in New York. I knew what you did, but I didn't find out the reason until days later. You were checking up on me. Of course, I'm not a fool. I have to admit, the boost in self-esteem was refreshing. Unfortunately, Letitia was taking an early morning flight back to New York. I hated to see her go. She left me with a happy heart and the key to her apartment. The Lamborghini dealer couldn't come to collect the car until the next day. It was okay because I wasn't going to drive it. The movers came with a small truck and picked up my stuff to go to New York. Terry Davis called and told me that Keystone Development was in serious financial trouble. It seemed that Clayton had mysteriously lost almost all of its supporters. And almost overnight there were rumors that some people were picking up markers that Clayton had not received. That evening I was visited by my almost ex-wife. To what do I owe this unexpected pleasure? I could not refrain from sarcasm. I need to talk to you about some things. I'm leaving in a few days, but I'll help you in any way I can. I was going to take my old Volvo, but I noticed it was gone. What's that orange car in the garage? Things were starting to get interesting. I'm sorry, Marcy, when you said you didn't want your old Volvo. I sold it back to the dealer. You may still have it if you want to check it out. I'd never heard Marcy use that term before. The orange car was a gift, but I'm going to return it tomorrow anyway. I can't imagine myself driving something like that. The sticker on the window said $225,000. Who would give you a gift like that? Your new girlfriend? No, it was a cattle rancher from Argentina that I helped a few weeks ago. It was just to show my gratitude. So what else can I do for you? There was a pause in the conversation. I realized that Marcy wanted to say something but didn't know how to do it. Would you like something to drink? I have beer and diet sodas. No, I can't stay long. How did you even get here? I don't see a car. I took a cab. Gary, you said you were leaving in a few days. Is it okay if I stay in the house for a while? The house is sold. We closed the deal yesterday and the new owners will move their stuff in this weekend. They're letting me stay until Friday, but that's it. What's wrong with the apartment by the river? She did not answer that question. There was a brief lull and then she asked what happened to the money you got for the house. Things were getting really interesting now. I was starting to like that. The conversation was getting on the right track. It's all gone. You clearly said you didn't want anything. The money I used to set up a new apartment for my move. Where are you moving to? New York. I got a promotion and a big raise. I should be there on Monday. I wasn't going to tell Marcy that I was going to live with Letitia. I also wasn't going to tell her about the bank account in the Caymans. You never told me what happened to the apartment. It was only leased. The lease expired and the owner didn't want to renew it. Where do you live now? We're staying at the Holiday Inn until Clayton picks up a new place. Oh, I see, now I understood why she wanted to move into our old house. Marcy looked a little confused. She wanted to ask for help, but she didn't know how to approach it. I realized she was in trouble. There was a lull in the conversation again. Is there anything else I can do for you? Could you give me a ride to the Holiday Inn? The first half of the trip went smoothly. I understand you have a girlfriend. Tell me about her. She's not really a friend but more of a business partner. What kind of business? You're not doing any business. You're right. I'm just a grocery store clerk. I can't fool you, can I? Marcy was silent. She was looking out the window and I heard her whisper to herself. This was the moment when I could vent all my frustration. It was the perfect opportunity to let her know how much the pictures in the papers hurt me. But instead I just smiled to myself. She was in a bad way and I redeemed myself. I felt bad for a moment but it passed quickly. I dropped her off at the motel entrance. She left without looking back or saying goodbye. I hated to say it, but I felt a sense of satisfaction. The week was shaping up nicely. Thursday morning I unexpectedly received the final divorce papers. They were early, but who am I to complain? On the front page of the Huntsville paper was a picture of Letitia Rothberg arriving at the airport. Your sincere friend was holding her hand. A copy of the newspaper is delivered free to each room at the Holiday Inn. Marcy can read it at breakfast. I was sure Clayton would explain to her who Letitia was. I emptied the safety deposit box at the bank. My 7 pennies will come in handy in the near future. I thought Letitia would ask about them while she was here, but she never once broached the subject. All our conversations were strictly social. If she was interested in me for business reasons, she never pointed it out. I set a buy it now price on all the coins in the auction. More than half of them were sold at that price. I spent the rest of the day packing up the coins that were sold and preparing them for shipping to the post office. The rest of the auction had to close by noon on Friday. If all PayPal payments went through, all coins would be mailed the same day. Any unscrupulous buyers will have to wait until Monday. Early Saturday morning, I was on my way. Most of the money from my PayPal account was transferred to my Cayman account. I also left a small amount on PayPal in case I saw something I just had to have. The people who bought the house drove up just as I was leaving. It was a win-win for both of us. The trip in would take about 12 hours with no delays. Letitia was in the apartment and promised to prepare a home-cooked dinner for my arrival. I wondered who would cook it. It was good to know that I was still man enough to win the heart of such a beautiful woman. I had no doubt that I could fulfill all her expectations. I was just crossing the Virginia state line on Interstate 81 when Cindy called. It seems Clayton Manning had skipped town and left Marcy with no car, no place to live, no money, and a hefty motel bill. I asked Cindy what she thought I should deal. She laughed and replied, "Smile.